Talk live with Rodney Grimes. People to people, power to power, positive thinking people. Yes, with Sir Rod and Lady Z. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's about we. And God we trust. Positive thinking people. Positive thinking people. Positive thinking people. Every Monday night, every Wednesday night, every Friday night, every Monday night, every Wednesday night. That's right. Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is Rodney Grimes, People to People, here in Tyson Corner. As you know, this is the podcast for the people. I'm excited like always when I'm bringing the new guests on and we talking about some real good information to help us move forward, to change our lives. Everything is to empower us. Today, this gentleman I had the opportunity to meet at a networking event. I'm going to let him really tell you who he is and what his agenda is. This man is doing some amazing things that's going to really intrigue you. It's going to be things that you're going to want to be a part of. And as we go forth, we'll just kind of like give you a little more information on how to even get in touch with him and to support his cause. This is Mr. Anoop Mehendale. Did I pronounce the last name?
Anoop Mehendale.
Okay.
Close enough.
Close enough. Welcome to the program. How you doing today?
Doing well.
Okay.
Excited. I've always been listening to podcasts, and this is kind of fun to be on one.
Yes. Well, we are the People Podcast for the DMV. We make it a point to really try to bring all good information, positive information. We do things covering all avenues. So a lot of times when I meet someone who has something interesting to talk about, I just come on and I just sit down and dialogue with them.
Yeah.
So as people, they probably can tell you have an accent. Where you originally from?
So I grew up in India, and I spent, I would say, 30 years plus of my life, maybe a little too long, longer than I would have wanted to in India, but I still have, my parents live there, so I have a lot of strong connections, but I love living in this area, in the DMV area, and I've spent the last 6 years here. But overall, I moved here when I was 32, now I'm 45, so you can do the math, it's 13 years since I moved to the US.
Okay. And is it a big difference, in the cultures?
Absolutely. I think it's a huge difference, and it's what's funny is I keep talking to a lot of my cousins who moved after me. So the experience for me and for a lot of the people I speak to is when they first come here, especially from my milieu in India, when they first come here they think, well, it's not that different, like the same people, people are people, maybe they're a little bit more wealthier, better infrastructure, but really not that different. Like we get the same internet these days, we have the same gadgets and everything else, right? So that's kind of like where people begin. And then, at least I can now speak to my own experience, every year that's passed I realized, oh my gosh, it's so different. And then the next year passes and I realize this is like completely worlds apart. So like now I'm at a point like in the last few years where I've realized as to how really different it is. And I think it's very subtle, like at one level, because obviously some people think it's different because it's the color of the skin or some very obvious superficial things, but you can easily go past that. I mean, people go past that very soon. But I think that the deeper level, I feel like society, the way the society is structured, the way people's values are, what they really think is important in life. I think those kinds of things you discover only after a long period of time as you interact with more and more people, and then you have closer relationships, and that's the kind of difference that I've noticed after I come here. And I really value the kind of culture we have here in the US compared to everywhere else I've seen. And I grew up in India, but I traveled to Japan, Germany, a few times to London, so been around a few places at least and have some understanding. But I've always kind of liked the culture here, which is why I made the choice to kind of move here finally.
That's amazing, and okay, and you adjusted easily.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and in a way, it was easier for me because at least kind of the society that I come from in India, most of them are educated in English, though with an accent, as you can tell, but educated in English for most of their kind of life. So at least the language isn't as much of a barrier. And I think, especially these days, everyone has access to TV shows, movies, all the cultural things that they can absorb. So it becomes a lot easier for people to come in and kind of get used to it. So it was the same experience for me. So it wasn't too hard. And I think kind of, in fact, it felt like a land of opportunity. I mean, to be honest, like I almost feel like, oh my gosh, why are people here not taking advantage of this great opportunity that's out there for them?
And I'm glad you said that. So that it's supposed to be the land of opportunity.
Yes.
And so, with you saying that, what are some of the opportunities that you actually got involved in?
Yeah, so as I came here, a few things started to happen. I mean, one, like, I came here through a startup that I was a part of, which was just up and coming. And they had business here in the US as well as in other parts of the world, but most of the business was here in the healthcare sector. So I came here to manage a particular client of ours who was basically struggling with trying to collect all the healthcare data and put it together in a way that will give them very meaningful insights. And they had the best collection of healthcare data, all the prescriptions that doctors write. They would collect all that data, in terms of they would strip out all the personal information, obviously, and then they would say, okay, what is the pattern you can see across people's different prescriptions from different doctors in different parts of the country for various conditions and drugs, right? So that was the kind of data they had, but they weren't able to make full use of it. So I was helping create a team that helped analyze it to a certain level so that you can then start to infer some really high-level insights from that data. So that was the first thing I got involved with that kind of startup, and that startup went on to do really well. And from there, because I was here in the US and I had that experience for the last few years, another, kind of a very well-established company who had a lot of capital but didn't know what to do with it next in terms of the next new idea. When they saw that this company was doing well, they approached me and said, hey, we've seen you do well through this company. Can you build a similar sort of unit for us and build a similar sort of business, because it's a growing area. This whole analytics thing is a growing area. And I was excited, and I took it up, and I kind of put together a business plan, and then got $500,000 in 2011 to kind of go and do this, which seemed like a great opportunity, which was hard to find in those days in places like India. And I think now the picture has changed. I mean, it's sometimes even easier to raise money in India, I think now, just given what's happened in the last 5-10 years from a technology standpoint. But in those days, I wouldn't have easily got that opportunity if I wasn't here. So that was the first step, and then from there, that company got sold to Moody's Analytics on Wall Street, so which was successful. But then I was left with like, oh, what do I do next? And that's when for a series of kind of like reasons which I had no control over, we ended up. I mean, my wife and I, we were basically my wife was pregnant with our son, and we didn't want to have too much uncertainty. And then we also had this constraint of being on a work visa, which doesn't allow you to kind of easily change employers or change kind of even from one function to another. So a lot of restrictions that come with that visa. So given all of those things, we wanted to kind of find some stable place, but also do something meaningful, and that would allow me to do other kind of important things in the future. So one opportunity that came up was with a healthcare company in Pittsburgh. And I went and joined them and worked in strategy for a few years. So that opportunity opened up, and what that led to is then kind of being hired by a very large health insurance company called Aetna, which is now part of CVS Health, which the pharmacies are run from. So I was there at the office of the CEO, which was a very good opportunity for me to see how everything works in a large corporation, how they try and influence kind of Washington, for example, for some of the policy changes that they had to get done, or how would they run the large business that they had to run. So that sort of exposure I would have struggled to find if I wasn't here. I think that's what opened up, and then from there it allowed me to kind of start a couple of businesses on the side. Even though I was on this work visa, my wife was now allowed to start a company, so with her on the kind of the forefront, we were able to start a couple of other businesses, and she was able to run those businesses. So all of those things became kind of, incrementally things were getting better and better, and that's kind of that's what happened in terms of my own career, and I think, continue to progress. And I think everything culminated in the last couple of years where, living here in McLean, not too far from Tyson's, I met one gentleman who seemed to be very international. He introduced me to a scientist who's basically struggling to produce a new drug. Well, actually an old drug, but he wanted to produce it because there was a global shortage for that drug. And initially I was very skeptical. I mean, how is it possible that there is a drug and there's a shortage, and this gentleman who can produce it doesn't get the money to do it? But it ended up that it's true, because the incentives for different companies is very different. So this is like what's called as an old technology, if you will, from a drug manufacturing perspective. So nobody wants to go there and invest as much. They don't have the incentives to do that. And this person was in France, so even though he was like the top scientist there in France, people here in the US have no, kind of don't have a very good sense for how that would work. So I think for a number of factors, he was not getting the right attention. So, but I felt like it was a very worthy cause, because there are, thousands of people who are actually about 17,000 people who die from bladder cancer right now. And many of them probably are dying because they don't have enough of the drug that's required for them. So what doctors are, kind of like forced to do is basically ration the drug. So instead of giving them the amount of dosage that's required, because there's a shortage, they are trying to minimize it, and that's causing kind of, additional surgery, people losing organs, potentially dying. So it's this sort of a situation that I'm trying to help correct. So that was the kind of the culmination of all these different opportunities that came from moving here.
That and you were saying, so basically, and it's really kind of ironic that when you are in the business of helping people,
Yeah.
and bringing information to the public, we find a lot of people falling short because financial reasons, but more so because of the information
Yes.
that need to be shared and
Absolutely.
put out. And so this doctor, you're still working with right now.
Yeah, so there are two doctors. One was the gentleman in France that I mentioned, who was from an institute called the Pasteur Institute, which is one of the leading institutes across the world. In fact, they are the ones who came up with the first vaccine in the world in 1921, which was used for kind of tuberculosis, right, which was a big problem in those days. So that same vaccine actually, is now given to every child in across the world, except in some countries like the U.S. And the reason they don't give it here in the U.S. is they think that there's not much of a tuberculosis problem here. But almost all other countries, like when I was born, I had the same shot, the vaccine shot given right after birth, right? Whereas here, I think for the kind of the set of vaccines that are given at birth, it's not included in the U.S., but in most other countries it is. So there's extremely safe sort of vaccination, which is given to every kid, and it's a very simple thing. I mean, in a sense, it doesn't cost you that much. It's anywhere between a few cents to $2 per dose. So it's a very inexpensive medication. But the problem is, because it's such an old technology, nobody's making money on the patents, for example. So there is not a lot of economic incentives for a lot of people to produce this at scale. And also, producing this is not easy. I mean, it has to be very strictly, the biological standards for preventing contamination, everything have to be really strictly followed. And very few people know how to kind of create it and build it. And also, since it's a bacterium, it can only grow at a certain rate. If you're putting it into a kind of biological facility, it has to grow at a certain rate. And if you cannot make it grow faster, then you can't produce enough of it that's required.
Right.
And this particular doctor, Dr. Raymond Hassani, he spent the last 25 years of his life just doing that at the top institute, which invented this bacteria, for example, this therapy. And he has come up with a technique to be able to do it at a very, very fast scale, which will allow you to kind of completely take care of the shortage that people are facing right now.
That's a little rough on the doctor to have that knowledge, knowing that he'd be able to help so many people, but yet be in a kind of like have his hands tied.
Yes.
That he can't really get out and share the information for other reasons than just not being the finance.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the other interesting thing was, because I got involved with this, I tried to understand who are the leading authorities in the United States around this therapy, and I realized that Dr. Donald Lamb, who is associated with the University of Arizona, and he was in fact the first doctor.
No, keep talking.
Yeah. So so in the 1970s, he basically got the research funding from NIH, I think, in those days, or one of the kind of agencies here in Washington, which either the FDA or the NIH, and then he basically did a trial which proved that for bladder cancer this was the best therapy, and then after his study in the 1970s, it was pretty much accepted as the go-to therapy for bladder cancer, especially when it's at a superficial stage. And but now he's retired. This doctor is retired, and he's like very, very angry and upset that even though this has been known for the last 30 years and it's the primary therapy, now all of a sudden there's a shortage of this drug. And so he was very upset. So we got in touch with him, and I kind of started to build a relationship with him. And then I realized that he had even more applications for this, and the reason he wasn't exploring them was because of the shortage. For example, like the number one application Dr. Lamb is now working on in his retirement years. I mean, this is completely from the goodness of his heart. He has I guess he has no economic incentive in doing this, but from his own kind of like experience of the last, I don't know, 50 years now, he's seen that anyone that he had treated for bladder cancer with this BCG treatment that we were talking about, they've not had Alzheimer's. So even when they had family history of Alzheimer's, they've not had that problem. So he started to get intrigued with this and did a lot of studies, at least literature research in terms of what else has been published about this. And he realized that there is almost convincing evidence that if you have, BCG administered either as a vaccine or or because of the bladder cancer, that would be an effective prevention for Alzheimer's, which is fantastic, because there's no other drug right now for Alzheimer's that's known to be effective. So if you can prevent it altogether or stop it in its tracks, so for someone who's already starting to develop Alzheimer's symptoms, if you have just a few vaccine shots, you basically stop the further development of Alzheimer's. So this is just like miraculous and amazing. I mean, I was asking him whether it can even be reversed, and I don't have a conclusive answer to that, but at least it's going to stop it or even prevent it from kind of starting off in the 40s or 50s, and people are starting to feel those symptoms. So I think just having that is an amazing development. So what he's doing right now is he got University of Arizona to kind of agree to do a study with him so that he can definitely show that this is actually going to work. But even to do that, he has very little drug available, which is when he asked us asked me and kind of through me, Dr. Raymond Abalustani, if he can produce enough of this so that his research study can be, he can donate enough of the medication for his research study, which I think should be definitely possible, but we need to first fund and finish the plan that is in the works right now. I mean, it's already 90% complete or 85% complete. So I think there's a little bit of completion to be done. Once it's done, I think he will have enough for the Alzheimer's work as well. So I think between these two doctors, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I'm actually doing something very, very meaningful, utilizing my understanding of the United States healthcare system, understanding of finance, understanding of kind of some of the business work that I did in the past in terms of being able to grow the business. So this is what is really driving me right now, to kind of bring it all together and make this a success. I think it's going to save lives. It's going to make a lot of people's lives better at a very, very low cost. I mean, and I don't think there's any patenting we could do around this, from what I can tell. So it's not like someone's going to make a ton of money. But even with just given the impact it has and the number of people this can reach, I think just on, even though it's a very small cost per dose or per medication, I mean, given the fact that there are millions of people who can benefit from it, there is still enough money for it, to be profitable, but it's not going to be astronomical like some of these other pharmaceutical companies are making money.
And basically, I think with the way technology is right now, we have a tendency to forget about the things that worked in the past.
Absolutely.
And what we do is we start looking at technology and thinking, okay, well, we need to set that aside.
Yeah.
But if we be realistic about these things, we'll find out it's situations like with this doctor that has something that's already working
Yes.
that we should be focusing on instead of trying to really push that aside.
Yeah.
And we could probably save so many people a rough journey in their life.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's in a way like this kind of like problem of plenty, like especially when I come from a place like India where I was fortunate to be, I used to think I was middle class, but when I started to look at the statistics, I realized I was probably among the richer people in India, even though it's nothing compared to the rich people here. But at least for those times and kind of where I was, relatively speaking, we were much, much better off. We had the right education, we had a great family, we had enough money to kind of like never had any shortage for the basic needs. So given that sort of like conditions that we come from, but like, you know, the fact that like if you look at overall the rest of India, rest of any other part of the world outside of, you know, Western Europe and America, you know, you kind of see the same kind of trends, right? Which is people are living on much, much less money and doing almost the same things with very, very little. I mean, so I think the fact that like kind of the United States people think like you got to spend a lot of money to do anything is kind of like a problem of having plenty and kind of like, you know, it's almost like, you know, work expands to fill the time that's available, people say. It's a similar kind of phenomenon. I think like people start to spend more money because that money is available. It's not because that is required, that kind of money is required to be spent on something. And I think it's the same for technology. I mean, there's a fascination for everybody to want to go for the latest and the greatest, but the latest and the greatest are not necessarily
Always
that
the
much
best.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it's unproven. I mean, that's my concern with a lot of the things that, you know, like people, especially with healthcare, right? I mean, you have new drugs and you will know the impact of that only, you know, 10, 20 years later. I mean, the immediate impact, maybe you can see if it's dangerous or not, and there are a lot of studies the FDA can ensure that you do, which will ensure that the safety is not compromised. But the long-term impacts are only known in the long term, and usually those studies over the long term either are not done as well as they should be, or like, you know, by the time it's known, it's kind of too late for a lot of people. And it's always at the margin. It's not like, you know, if a treatment is given to 100 people, you would have like massive deaths. I mean, I think that is already kind of addressed by all the regulations and FDA's kind of norms, but it's always at the margin. So instead of like, you know, instead of 1 or 2 people having some side effects, if it's 5 or 6 people, it's a lot. I mean, you know, it's 5 times a 1, right? 5 is 5 times a 1, and that's a lot. And I think those kinds of things we will not know for the next, you know, 10, 20 years. Whereas with older treatments, like for example BCG, you've done that for years, for decades, and you've given that treatment to, you know, billions of people at this point. So like, and if you still haven't had any major side effects, then you know it's extremely safe and effective. So I think that's the real advantage of older technology, if you will, in the healthcare space.
Again, the thing that really bothers me is that some of this has already been proven.
Yes.
And so these doctors are financially struggling. And so basically, we were talking about this a little bit prior to us coming on the air. So you now have established a GoFundMe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you the GoFundMe is GoFundMe.me/56D 4686E. I'm going to repeat this again. A lot of times what we as people got to realize, we got to get into the position where we support one another in order for us to be able to maintain in the present and in the future. That's important. We have a tendency to try to just live just at the moment.
Yeah.
But, you know, we got a lot of people. I have a mother that's 91 years old.
Oh my God.
Okay, so we have longevity in my family. So of course, then there's individuals like yourself and these doctors who are having these medications and techniques and formulas to help people live a long, prosperous life, and it's important that people take the opportunity to support it. So I want to put that out there again. I'm going to put it back out there later on. It's GoFundMe. It's actually GoFund.me/56D 4686E. This gentleman, Anoop, is we had a chance to talk several times prior to this conversation. I was just truly fascinated about, you know, that you have this in you to want to help bring this to the forefront. And so it's not so much money driven, it's about helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such an easy thing to accomplish. I mean, it's not, you know, you don't need to come up with the world's greatest new invention. You don't need to do like anything. It's just kind of letting people know that this option exists. You know, getting a few $1 million put together. And again, I think half of the battle is awareness. Once there is awareness, there are a lot of very, very rich people who have Alzheimer's in their family, who if they know that this can help them, like, you know, for them it's a really small thing to kind of like fund something like this.
Right.
But I think my mission is really, how do I make people aware that this is a real option? And again, they don't have to take my word for it. I want them to directly talk to these doctors directly and kind of know for themselves, like, this is real and this is something that can help, and then make that personal decision to kind of like, you know, support this kind of cause, right? So that's my kind of goal with trying to bring this to the attention of people. So in fact, like, you know, I was talking to your friend Anthony, and the idea is to, like, if, you know, maybe we're having this interview and it's, I don't know, we have a few people listening to this at this point and maybe some others who will, you know, see it on YouTube, but, you know, we could do much better. Maybe we could make a much more impactful film out of this, like a short film out of this, and put it out there for people to kind of share on social media or on you know, on YouTube or whatever it is, that, you know, becomes kind of like a viral thing where people start to become aware of it, and that's kind of the real goal. So I'm thinking if I can even attract enough money to kind of create something like that, and that new film can then kind of generate awareness, and that will bring, you know, bring a solution to this problem of shortages that we have right now. Plus also,
I am like really intrigued with all the information and everything that you're giving me. It's just imperative that we, like we doing at People to People, we bring this to the forefront. So let me. I like to be real about things. In the process, you got to start somewhere. And many of us are struggling in areas when we're trying to do something that's going to be profitable for not just a small community, but for, I mean, we talking the entire world for real.
absolutely.
And so, even as we go forth into doing different projects like myself, you have your areas. So when we talk about funding, when we talk about supporting, we talk about the information, it's imperative that we as individuals don't give up when we don't see the big picture. Because, and I'm gonna jump on something just a little different. I was at an event the other day, and they're trying to raise money, right?
Yep.
Well, I'm not going to say exactly what it was about because it's a little personal. But one of the individuals who was heading this event is doing it based on a situation that occurred to his family.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
I would want to ask the gentleman. I asked to interview him, and he said he might come on. But what I wanted to know, what he had did this prior to the incident, which is important. Because see, we got to realize something. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't wait till something has happened for us to fall short. When we can do things like we got individuals like yourself and these doctors that's all out here promoting this cure, this technology, this information. And so, how would they be able to go and just get some more information about what you're talking about as far as like supporting these doctors and the medicines thing they're trying to share?
I have an entire presentation on this, which I'm thinking maybe I can attach to the GoFundMe page, and maybe that's one way to do it. The other option is, I think maybe we create a separate awareness building kind of page on Facebook, or, you know, someplace where it's easy to create that. I have all the information, I just need to put it on a website that everybody can come to and visit. So maybe that's the other way to do it. And then I think, I mean, all of this is public information, right? So this is not like anything proprietary. And then I think I have, you know, like maybe I can give you some information right now on the show, right? I mean, you mentioned how it's not impacting like individuals or single family, but it's a broad-based benefit for a lot of people. So if you, I mean, can you guess like what's the percentage of people in the United States who have Alzheimer's? Like if you think about people over 65, for example, do you have, what would be your guess?
I mean, I'm 62, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering things. I'm not saying I'm having Alzheimer's, but who knows?
Yeah.
But I think that and when you start hitting 55, 60, all of the things that's going to start happening is going to start developing.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
so you talking a good percentage of individuals that's going to
Yeah,
experience
so,
these.
so the numbers are like, 6 million people right now in the United States have Alzheimer's, right? And almost 1 in 10, like 10.7% is what I'm seeing as a statistic here from the Alzheimer's Association. 1 in 10 people, basically 10% of the people have Alzheimer's once they go past 65. So that's what, that's the kind of impact we're talking in terms of numbers. But I think the impact is even more, massive than that, because think of the costs that Alzheimer's has on the society, right? I mean, if, God forbid, like once somebody's parents have Alzheimer's, it really changes the life of the kids and even the grandkids maybe,
Yeah.
right? Because
it
now
affects the whole family.
it affects the whole family, and the kind of sadness that I've seen expressed from people saying, I mean, I can't recognize my father or mother anymore. I mean, I don't know who that person is anymore, and I think, that person kind of gradually loses memory, ability to do anything, and kind of like almost becomes vegetative. So just seeing that sort of deterioration is very, very telling on kind of like the people who are on the caregiving side of things, or the family side of things. So I think the impact is much, much bigger than just the 6 million or the 10%.
Hello, caller. This is People to People. Can you state your name and where you're calling from?
This is Rachel Polk calling from Booster Heights, Maryland.
Hello. How you doing, Queen Rachel?
I'm blessed. And about yourself?
I am definitely blessed, and sitting here with this gentleman who's giving us some real positive information.
Yeah, I see. I didn't get the beginning part, but hello, doctor.
Well, he's actually not a doctor.
Okay.
I'm not a doctor, but I worked with 2 other doctors, amazing doctors, who are working in this space.
Okay. So I have questions. So we deal with mental illness, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to know, are they looking into long-haul COVID patients? This also dealing with mental issues, brain that's leading to Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yeah, no, you bring up a very interesting point actually, because what we've, this is funny, I mean it's sad and funny in a way, because there was a study done where, they compared population of people who got severe COVID-related symptoms in countries where they had been vaccinated with BCG as a kid versus in countries where they were not vaccinated as a kid, like here in the US, for example. And the difference was night and day. So basically, I think even as a way to prevent COVID, BCG vaccination has a huge role to play in the population. And again, this is something that every child would be given at birth, so it's not something you need to do, especially, but that already kind of primes your immune system to be able to fight off these kinds of conditions like COVID. So I think that's number one. And number two, I think I have personally heard of a lot of stories where COVID is kind of triggering, kind of like COVID or maybe the vaccine, I don't know which one is the cause, but like something is creating people to have kind of more neurodegenerative diseases now in the last couple of years. And if that is true, and I don't have any statistics to say one way or the other, and it looks like you feel the same way, but if this is true, I think, kind of having something like this as a way to prevent any further deterioration could be very, very helpful. Because regardless of what the cause is, what the BCG vaccine does is, according to Dr. Lam, it basically kind of primes your immune system, and so that it kind of like, it's much more ready to kind of fight off any of these things. And the neurodegenerative piece is also, I think, related to that. I mean, I would love to get him to talk about it in detail, but I think, it has an impact on any further deterioration.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love to check out the website
Yeah.
and get more details because I'm part of the advocate group for long haul COVID patients, and I'm hearing all these stories. Me myself, I have it, and I'm noticing some things. Um, but when I went to the neurologist, he couldn't find anything with the MRI, and it looked like a perfect brain. But there's something going on because forgetfulness, side brain, and stuttering, something dealing with the neurology, the nervous system, and tremors. So
Yeah.
it's something there, and I'm doing my own study, research study for myself and my own experiences. But have you heard of Dr. Amen? He's a neurologist
I
in
think
the U.S.
I think I may have heard because I was, by chance I was driving and I heard a radio show where someone was talking about this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the only time I've heard about it.
Mm-hmm. His MRI was done in colors, like activity of the brain, and he can reverse it. So, like, through his study of reversing the brain back to the way you used to be before you started forgetting things. So, he was the next person for me to study, and he has different clinics around the U.S. Then I hear this tonight because I would love to introduce this to the group that I belong to.
Yeah.
To spread the word of you guys needing the funding and see if you guys can include long haul COVID in your study.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because when I spoke to Dr. Lamb about his study, what he wants to do is kind of create different cohorts in the study and study the impact over the next 5 to 10 years, because oftentimes this neurodegenerative diseases kind of, you only see the real impacts over almost like several years. So maybe kind of doing a longitudinal study of about 10 years is what's required to be able to kind of have definitive data. And so what he was trying to do was like trying to kind of create different sort of cohorts. One is based on different ethnicities or genetic backgrounds. One was based on like prior conditions. So like he wanted to kind of create these different groups so that when you collect all the data and then you can later compare, you can really tell the difference statistically, saying when you compare it to a group which was a control group versus a test group, here is the result, and that result is going to have much more value and weightage as we convince everybody else to make this mainstream treatment for everyone with Alzheimer's. So I think that was his goal. So I think you bring up a great point about long haul COVID. I mean, if there are enough people in that group, including some people from that into the study, would be a fantastic way to address that.
Actually, and I know we talking to her on the phone. She can see you, so.
Oh, I'm
yeah,
looking at the phone.
I
That's
know. I know. It's okay. But so again, this is an opportunity for individuals to start getting information and seeing that we got different people in different areas that are very interested in trying to help individuals who have Alzheimer's or different areas. I want to give that information.
Sorry, I just realized Dr. Lamb's presentation. I have it on my laptop here. He'd mentioned that diabetes is another area where this can help a lot, which I didn't even bring it up, but that's another kind of group that he wants to study, because that's, again, I think he has seen some benefits already from existing papers that have been published, but he wants to do a definitive study to kind of prove this. So I think that would be a huge benefit as well. I mean, as you know, diabetes is probably the number one condition that everyone's facing across the world, not just in the US. So if that's the case, then you're not talking about 6 million, you're talking about 60 million people, right?
Yeah.
So it's a huge number. So I think just getting enough money to even kind of set up the study, get the right volunteers. Again, the medication is not expensive, but just creating the setup for the study and doing the research and then tracking people over the next 10 years. I think that's what the main cost is going to be on the study perspective. And then I think there's a little bit of extra funding that's required to get the plant completed, because then that will kind of ensure that for the next 5 years we have enough supply, so there's never a supply shortage. So I think those are the two things I think we should kind of really focus on in terms of funding this.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any more questions?
No, I just want to, when the show is over, to get more information from them to help out.
Yeah, I mean, I have the GoFundMe page where I think I can add a little bit more information, maybe give a link, but I really need help with someone who can actually kind of like collect it all, put it into a nice, even if it's a Facebook page, I don't know, like, just kind of put it together in a way that's kind of we can easily spread through social media even. I think even kind of to do that, I think, I'm looking for help and, people who can kind of be part of this initiative.
So that's what I wanted to say. Here at People to People, that's what this is about. We're about networking. We're about building. This is not Anoop's last time. It may be his first time on the program, but we have talked about some things, and we want to talk about how to get this information out. So we're working on some opportunities where he's going to be coming on again, and we're going to take the opportunity to make sure that people like Rachel and many other people who need that information, they're going to know how to go about getting it, and also supporting it to a point where we can get it so people can say, okay, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
Because it's very important that we do not be in another situation like with the pandemic, with COVID, because this is unreal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, if we think about it, and I think on many cases, a lot of this could have been prevented if we took preventative measures. Meaning individuals like yourself who are dealing with the people who are doing the studies. Oh my goodness, that's it. The people just doing the studies.
Yeah.
So.
But Rodney, you bring up another very interesting thing though, like, which is, and I speak to Dr. Lamb, he brings this up all the time, saying, look, I mean, I'm trying to do this thing from a vaccination perspective, which is going to definitely help. But that is not the only thing people with Alzheimer's have to do, right? I mean, they have to, there are many, many ways that will help them, like, kind of exercise, just having a very healthy diet, like a whole bunch of things, which are simple things, which are nothing to do with any medical intervention, which they have to continue to do. And when he goes on, I'm inviting him to come and speak to some people in New York, and when he does that, like, he wants to emphasize the whole thing. It's not about just this, hey, just fund me with this research. That's not his goal, because he's retired. I mean, I think he's very wealthy personally. I mean, he's like, he doesn't need any money, and he's very, very old gentleman. I mean, he doesn't need to work at this point. The reason he's doing this is because he genuinely wants to spread this understanding and awareness. And for him, it's the package deal. It's not about just, take this, vaccine or whatever it is. It's making sure that the person does everything and informed about doing everything they have to do to kind of keep their mental faculties into a kind of a later age, for example, right? So I think all of these kind of come together. It's not just one or the other.
Yeah. Again, for everybody just tuned in, this is People to People with Rodney Grimes. I have Mr. Anoop Mehendale, who is here, and he's talking about individuals who are already in the process of trying to help people with different situations, like you said, Alzheimer's. We're talking about diabetes. We talk about a lot of things, and then we also have Miss Rachel Pope on the phone, who was talking about this. It's called, what is it called with the COVID? Oh, she hung up.
Lost.
She said that long-term COVID.
Yeah.
So, for everybody that just tuned in, I'm telling you, this is very, very important. Yeah, you bear with me. As the podcast of the DMV, this is what our agenda is, to bring information like this to you. How do we go about making it so that we can take care of each other? It's okay, we can talk about many, many things, about the new iPhones and things, all that. And guess what? that's a part of us moving forward. But what's really important is our health and our well-being medically.
Yeah.
And when we got individuals like yourself who was out here supporting these doctors, what I want to do is let people know that again, this would not be his last time. And y'all bear with me because y'all already know you know how we flow. We keep it real on people to people. So right now, I'm gonna let y'all know I'm in the studio with this gentleman by myself, and I was so intrigued with the information that I had discussed with him about a week or so ago. I asked him to come on to be able to talk to you and to be able to give you some information on these things, because there's so many people out there that's dealing with Alzheimer's and the diabetes and all these other things. And one of the things, when we got doctors who are out there that's really trying to help, like you said, that doctor is not really hurting for anything. But he has the knowledge and he wants to share it.
Absolutely.
And so that's important for us to say, hey, we want to help you. We want, because it could help some of the people who can't afford these things.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about the GoFundMe, let me tell you something. Don't look at it like people begging. We talk about saving lives. And so it's imperative when we give out this information, you hold on to it. Hold on to it and utilize it, because you don't want to wait till it's a little too late when you say, oh, what I shoulda, coulda.
And again, I want to make sure it's not about just the money. I mean, it could be money, it could be somebody helping set up a web page with all the information we have, maybe coordinating one of these studies. Like, there's a lot of things that people can do from a volunteering on wanting to help sort of perspective, right? I mean, people spend their times watching videos for 2-3 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I mean, if this is a cause or area that's of interest to people, they could easily donate their time, if you will, like, and kind of help out, and that alone could have a huge impact on people's lives. So I think I just wanted to make sure that it's not just about like trying to get dollars. So
Right.
Dollars are very helpful because there are some things you have to do with dollars, but there are a lot of other things we could do without kind of like the money with volunteers who are
So
interested in helping.
how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the GoFundMe is the one that's kind of easiest to kind of get in touch with me on, and it's kind of unfortunate that it may be hard for people to remember it. I was wondering if you could just show the.
No, because actually it's going to be added too.
You can add it to that.
It's going to be added so that they'll be able to have access to it. But I'm going to again, I want to just tell you is GoFund.me /56D4686E. I'm gonna say that one more time. It's GoFund.me /56D4686E. And now, as you be moving forward, and with these GoFundMe, you're going to be able to put more information on there. They'll be able to call you or get in touch with you.
Yeah. So what I realized is maybe it's better to add my contact information as well in that in the fundraiser page, so that if somebody doesn't want to doesn't have the resources to donate money, but they want to kind of help in some way, maybe they can just email me and I can kind of either. I can then kind of say, okay.
Can you give your email now?
Yeah. So I can give my email as well.
Just you call it out that way.
Yeah, it's Anoop, ANOOP, A for Apple, N for Nancy, O for Oscar, P for Peter, dot Mehendale, M for Mary, E for Edward, H for Harry, E for Edward, N for Nancy, D for Denmark, A for Apple, L for Lima, E for Edward, @gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as he has put the information out, please, if it was somebody out there that you're interested in just trying to help by, like you said, build a website, or or you just want to just try to find a way to help get the information out.
Yeah, exactly.
You definitely want to go to the GoFundMe page and get in touch with Anoop and let them know. But I can tell you what's going to happen. We're going to be working on trying to get more exposure as we move forth with the People to People program, that we're building a relationship with him, so that as we move forth, we'll be able to have all that information, that we'll be able to put it on the screen, we're working on some things coming up. All I ask you to do is just be patient. I have a little thing on my wall in here, and it says every business started as a little business, where every project starts as a little project, and it excels as it moves forward. And so it's a process of us coming together,
Yeah.
and doing these things. I just, I look at, even with myself, every time we're trying to move forward to try to build and make progress, it's a team effort.
It is.
This is not for individuals. And it's not easy when you actually care. So when you want to get out here, because people don't, there's a lot of people wonder, okay, they don't know, we could be somewhere else, eating dinner, taking a nap, or whatever the case may be, but what we're trying to do is get the proper information out.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I did was, even as you spoke, I believe in taking immediate action, otherwise, kind of things get lost in the shuffle. So I just went on the GoFundMe page, and in the description, I added my email address as well, so that if people go to that GoFundMe page, they can easily find my email
Okay.
ID in case they didn't catch it.
Okay,
Um,
but you can also go to YouTube, and you're going to be able to watch this program on YouTube as well, to go back to really share this with some individuals who are interested in supporting this journey, getting involved, trying to find out more information, find out what it can do to benefit you and your family members. Alzheimer's is not something to take lightly. I know several people who had individuals in their family that was dealing with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is that it doesn't just affect the person who has it, but it affects the family members, because it's a hurting thing when you come in and you're trying to talk to somebody you've been dealing with all your life, and then all of a sudden they don't recognize you, or they don't know how to communicate with you.
Yeah.
And when we got a doctor out here that knows how to either stop the progression of it, or possibly even reverse it, that's important.
And I also want to say, it's with just a few doses of this vaccine, which is not like taking a pill for the rest of your life. It's not that. It's not about taking a pill which has side effects and everything for the rest of your life. It's just like I think he was suggesting, once a year shot basically, and that's even not even like every year. I think every few years. As long as you took that for maybe 3 or 4 years, you're pretty much kind of immunized against any further deterioration in your mental faculties, for example, right? So that's what we're talking about. So it's very simple, but very effective from his own experience.
Well, again, I really appreciate what you're doing, because it's important for our future.
Yes.
Many of us has to realize it takes a village to make things happen, and that's an old saying. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, believe me, it takes countries, it takes funding, it takes people with their knowledge for us to come together and be able to think about humanity at a level where it's not we sitting back and watching. Because this is really what I might be going off a little bit, but I want to say this. What really bothers me is that we look into negative things unconditionally.
Yeah.
But when it's something positive, we have a tendency to hold back. And really, we got to think about where we are today and how we're going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so it's individuals like these doctors that you're dealing with, and even yourself, that you take the time and help them to build these platforms to be able to get the information out. So I want to say really much respect to you for what you're doing.
No, it's really, what I'm doing is a very small piece of this puzzle. It's, all these different, these doctors, people who are kind of manufacturing this, people are just, there's everybody who's part of this. This is something I truly believe that, we tend to kind of celebrate certain things and kind of dismiss other things in life, but it's really coming together of these different things that what really makes a difference. So I think, we cannot neglect even the smallest piece of the contribution. And in this case, I'm really doing a very small piece of the contribution here. So I wouldn't take too much credit for this at all. But I do think that, you providing a great platform here for me to bring this to everybody's attention. And I'll be real honest with you. Like, I've been thinking of doing this, but I've always been hesitating. Oh, how do I go and do this? Oh, I have to create this website. It's so hard. I have already created all these presentations, but then if I had to create a website, it's going to take another amount of effort and time. So it kind of like something or the other kind of keeps me in inertia of like not wanting to do anything. But then like our chance meeting because of I don't know how this thing happened, but I think we got introduced.
Yeah.
And then like one thing led to the other. We started talking, and you said, hey, maybe you can come and tell your story here on the show. And like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. And then wheels started turning, and that led me to create this GoFundMe page, because otherwise, like people had told me you can do GoFundMe, but I never took action. But when you said, okay, you can come on the show, I said, okay, before I go on the show, I need to have a GoFundMe page.
And that's what's getting ready to happen as well. When I want people to know that we're going to look forward to, in the future, we're going to have Anoop come back, and he's going to talk. We got a lot going on. For everybody that been hanging in here with the People to People podcast, we're in a transitioning state. I always believe when things are getting ready to expand, you're running into some bumps in the road, and I don't let the bumps in the road deter me. But the reason why I say that is because it's almost like you were saying here, when you are putting the effort to really find these situations, you need help. You do. You need somebody to do a website. Okay, it's people out there that, you might be just sitting at home and can do a website in 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Or even a Facebook page.
Right. If you're able to do that, go to the page, get in touch with him, send him an email, and let him know that you're willing to help him. Let him know that he's not in this struggle by himself. I tell you, it's almost like this. When you move into a neighborhood, if you want a nice neighborhood, you start in your yard. But in order for the neighborhood to be profitable, your neighbors have to do their part.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So the same thing with us. This is why I invited him on the program. This is me doing my part. Hopefully, we have some other conversations that we talked about, and we're looking for that to take place in the future, where he's going to be coming on, and he's going to talk more about what's going on. I get so tickled. I'll tell you. I'm gonna share something before, because we got a couple minutes. I had a situation that took place over the week that was really important. Let me tell you, I'm talking a life-changing situation where I realized the small things don't matter. I'm telling you, the small things. I'm looking at here. We're in the studio. Normally is 3 or 4 people in here, so the motion light wouldn't go out. But because we're sitting here and not moving, it would. But I'm trying to make a point. I want you to work with me. That's almost just like life itself. Does that, for that moment, we get into an area where it's up and down.
Yeah.
But what do? You keep moving. You don't stop.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying to you, I'm going to say, please check out it is GoFundMe. No, it's GoFund.me/56D4686E. Check it out. See what we can do to help. I think that it would just be imperative for the doctors that he communicate with, for you to be able to call and say, you know what, somebody called and said, look, we're gonna move forward and try to make this happen.
Absolutely.
It's time for us. Hey, I told you I will go by real fast. This is the People to People podcast. This is my guest, Anoop Mehendale. This gentleman, I had the opportunity to, was introduced. I asked him to come onto the program. I want you to know that this platform is available for you. And I promise you, I'm going to have him back real soon in a whole different setting. Y'all gonna see what I'm talking about. We're gonna be able to put some information up on the screen. We're gonna be able to really, really come and get some more information out there for you. But GoFund.me/56D4686E. Remember, go there. You see his email. Get in touch with him. he will start giving you the opportunity to assist, you can make contributions, and if you want some more information, he'll be available.
Or just spread the word. I mean, just
Yeah.
just forward the link on to other people. Yeah.
My pleasure. I appreciate you so
Thank
much.
you. I really appreciate
Yes.
your help.
It's people to people. It's with Rodney Grimes. Here we are in Tyson Corner. And remember, I told you, you want to come see what's going on out here. It's 1934 Old Gallows Road, Suite 304, here in Tyson Corner, Virginia. It's a lot going on out here in the intelligence office. Man, I love it, and I'm excited. And you know, with the bumps in the road, guess what? I just keep rolling. Y'all have a good evening.